Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to work with the if-else statement in JavaScript. And these are called conditional statements. And we are going to talk about them in this tutorial. So let's get started. So let me zoom in. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right, so our programs also need to make decisions. So when you are developing a software, you need to make some certain decisions as the software runs on a given criteria or given criterion. So JavaScript is no different. We have the conditionals. So a condition means we have choices, basically. So that's what a condition means. And then what we are going to talk about in this tutorial is the bare bone conditional called the else if, the if else. And it's the most commonly used conditional tool. So to get started is that you need to understand that a conditional is basically a choice. So in some point of your program might need to make a choice based on given criteria. So we're also going to talk about something called a ternary operator, which is a simpler version of the if else, which basically uses one line. We're going to talk about that. So the if else makes our program reason, and based on that, we can control the flow of the program with ease. So in this guide, we will break down the essentials, if, else if, and introduce useful patterns like the ternary operator and short circuit evaluation. So let's go to the table of contents. So we'll start with the introduction, then the basic if statement, then how to use the else with the if, and then you start chaining multiple conditions. So what if you have different conditions or different choices? So we'll talk about that. And then we can talk about a comparison operators refresher. So we'll refresh on what comparison operators are. Then logical operators in conditionals. So the logical operators helps us to combine multiple operators or multiple conditions. Then finally talk about the ternary operator, the short circuit evaluation, common pitfalls and best practices. Finally the conclusion. So let's start with the introduction. So conditionals lets your code make decisions or choices. It's like when you meet two forks in the road and you conclude to follow one road because of a specific criteria. Also, taking a scenario of a day-to-day logic. So let me open up my VS Code so that we can get started. So you can open any folder you want and then create a file and name it any way you would like to. Doesn't matter. So you've said it reaches a point in a software whereby we need to make decisions. All right. So let's assume, I think we could use the mirror board. So let's see how the mirror board looks like. We can create a new one. I just want to explain to you what a choice is in a real life scenario. So I'm waiting for it to load up. So it has loaded up. So let's assume we have one way here. This is a road. And then this road, you meet two paths. So this one is A. This one is A and this one is B. So this is you. You're coming through this road. And then this road A is JavaScript. And then this one is Python. So Python. All right. So when you reach this point, you have two choices. So it's either you go the Python way or you go the JavaScript way. So this is what we are saying about choices. So in our program, we have data that is present in the program. Sometimes we need to act differently based on what some of this data is. So if we go back, so let me quit all this so that if I press tab, it can go back. So we have said our program can meet two ways. So let's create a variable called is raining. And as you can see, the naming of variables, let me just go back to naming of variables. You need to name your variable in a descriptive manner. So even if this was hidden, if you came and saw a variable called is raining, immediately in your mind you'll know that this is a variable that is carrying a Boolean value. And a Boolean value, as we said, is either a true or false. So let's say it's not raining. All right. And then we can start with that. And then let's start with the syntax of the if else statement. So the if else statement, it starts with the if, open parenthesis, and then open curly brackets. So the code that lies inside the curly brackets is called the block of the if statement. So this is the block. It's like its own contained environment. So if you go back here, so let me look for the move. I think I can say H. All right, so I can move that away. And then if we continue, so the if statement takes, you have to start with that keyword. You have to specify that you want to start with the if, and then you open curly brackets. So this one is where the condition lies. This one is the condition. And then we open curly brackets. And this is the body of the if statement. This is the body. So whatever is written here is the body of that if statement. All right. And if you go back here, this is the syntax. So basically, so you start with the if, open parentheses, and then open curly brackets to specify the body. So whatever lies inside the parentheses of the if statement is called the condition. And the condition basically needs to evaluate to a Boolean value. So what do I mean? I mean, inside the parentheses, we need to evaluate a Boolean value. So the first thing we can do is that we want to check whether it's raining, and whether if it is raining, we can do something. So because is raining is a Boolean value, we can immediately add it here without having to express or to try to evaluate this. And then if this value evaluates to true, the condition evaluates to true, the body of the if statement is executed. So it is raining, carry on. All right. So if the condition evaluates to true, the body of the if statement is executed. All right. So if you open the terminal and you do node index.js, nothing is printed. And why? Because is raining is false. So if it's false, this is skipped. This condition is skipped. So if we say it is raining, you can see now the body is executed and we get it is raining outside, carry an umbrella. So this is how we use the if statement to basically make choices, or we can control the flow of the program. So the next thing we are going to introduce is what is called, we just seen the syntax. So you have the if, the conditions need to evaluate to a Boolean value, so either true or false. And then the body of the if statement is executed only if the condition evaluates to a Boolean value. right? Similar case here about age. So similar case about age. So we can say let student age is 20. Then we have a check here. Let's assume this one is a guard of a club. The work of the guard is to check if you are of age. So if student age is less than, so this brings us to the new point. The new point of, let me just show you. The new point of the comparison operators. So I'll quickly go through all this because you need to understand the comparison. So in JavaScript, if you want to check if A is equal to B, so before we go to that scenario, so if you want to check, let's say let A is equals to, what can we say? Let first name is equals to John, and then let last name is equals to John. Let's assume this is a scenario. So how can we compare these two? We have two ways to compare these two, whether they are equal. So we can say whether equal. So the first way is console.log first name is equals to, so here is what one equal sign sign represents assignment. So you can see it in action here. We have let last name. So let last name is a variable, is assigned a value of John, which John is a string. So that one is already taken. We cannot use it to compare whether first name is equals to second name, because if you use a single first name, if you use a single operator equal sign, it will assign first name to last name. So what do we do? So in JavaScript, we have double equal sign. And then if we run this code, we get true. So is first name equals to last name? That one is true. So in JavaScript, you also realize we have yet another equal comparison operator, which is the triple equal sign. So we can say, is it equal? So you might ask, what is the difference between these two? Why do we need two of them? Why can't we just have one? So in JavaScript, so we can delete all this, and then we can say let num1 is equals to 1, let num2 is equals to 1. So I want to show you why we have double equal sign and triple equal sign. So if we console.log num1 equals num2, we get true. So you might be wondering, why is that? Is there a bug in JavaScript, or why is this the scenario? Why is this the case? So why is this happening? So this one happens because the double equal sign in JavaScript does something called type coercion. Something like that. So type coercion. So type coercion means JavaScript will attempt to change. It will attempt to change the second or the either of the numbers, either of the values to fit the equality comparison. So JavaScript will try to change this string 1 into a number. All right. So if it converts this string into a number, it will be 1, and then 1 is equals to 1 is true. That's why we get true. And that's why JavaScript introduced a triple equal sign, which does not do the type coercion. So something you might learn from here is that almost in all cases, just use the triple equal sign in JavaScript. Because in case we try to use the triple equal sign, everything works as expected. So the next thing we need to check is, we have just checked about this. It is called the strict equality operator. Then this is the equal operator. So the next one you need to check is the not equal and the strictly not equal. So basically, so if the not equal basically negates. To negate means the reverse. So if I say my boolean is equals to true, console.log not, so this one represents not. If I console log my boolean, what do I get? True. If I try to do not my boolean, what am I doing? I'm basically negating. Negation means we can assume we can use a negative. We can say it does the opposite. So if it's true, negating a truth value gives you false. If it's false, negating a false value gives you true. You see? So how can we use the negation to check whether num1? We can try with, so we can say console.log. So we can start with num1 is equals to num2. So we have something that is happening. I told you about type coercion in JavaScript, which is very, very tricky and can result into many bugs. So the first thing you need to understand is that this double equal sign will always lead to bugs. And then to prevent these bugs, what we need to do is we need to basically focus on the triple equal sign, because you can see now it is saying true. Let me use a different number. 40. This one, it will work. It only brings the bug effect whenever there is a string that is similar to a number. It will try to convert to and then try. So you get false. So if we try to add the not equals, so what are we doing? So if num1 is equals to num2, what about, so this one evaluates to false. So then what about num1 is not equal to num2? What does that mean? It basically negates the previous expression. So is num1 equals to num2? False. Not false, get true. But you can read it in English format and see num1 is not equal to num2. That is true. If you try to evaluate it using the English words or using the logics. And then we have the other one, no. So let's go back. Also, so basically what I did show you is this is the strict is equals to that one, and then not strict is equals to one equal sign. So this one, and then the other one was triple, and then this one was double. But in most cases, just use the strict equality operators. So this is the strict, this is the not strict. And we said the problem comes into play whenever we have same value that is similar, but now in the other data type. JavaScript, in the ones that are not, you can see it is bringing errors. So just understand that, and then you can go back. The less than, and greater than, you already know like that. So if you say num1 is greater than num2, is num1 greater than num2? Let's use our previous 40. Is num1 greater than num2? That's false. All right, and then we have less than. So is num1 less than num2? That's true. And then we have the less than or equal sign. So we start with the greater than. So is num1 greater than or equals to num2? So we still get false because num1 is not greater than num2 and it's not equal. So it means if num1 was 41, so we say num1 is greater than num2, but this one carries both. So it can either be equals or greater. Then it gives us true. And then the similar way into the less. So is num1 less than num2 or is num1 equals to num2? Get false. And then if we put this one to 40, this one will match the equals. And then that becomes true. And then it is still match for the less than. It matches both. All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the logical operators in conditionals. So what if you need to check two things, two conditionals? So we can have num3 what if you need to check both? So we have logical operators, which are, let's first talk about them. We have three. We have the and, we have the or, and the not. So we have the and. And the and, so if you have ever learned about something called the truth table means, I don't know whether I can create a truth table here. So true, false. All right, I want to create a truth table. Let's use, so A and B, and then A and B. So if A is true, we can use the most commonly to find all the values. We have, since they are two, we have true, false, true, false. Then you have false here and true. So you have true, 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 false. So you have true, 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 false, false, true, false, 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 true. We are checking of all the possible combinations. False. This one should be true. Yeah, you can still do this. So the and combination operator basically says that, so you need to understand this. It says that if there is a false in either of them, the whole operation is false. So here we don't have a false, so it becomes true. Here we don't have, here we have a false, so it becomes false. Here we have a false, it becomes false. And then here you have a false and it becomes false. So you can rephrase it like this. Any two conditions can be combined with the and it will only be true if both are true. All right. So this is if both are true. So that's what you need to understand, is that think of it as a good and bad. So if you have good and bad, is that the bad will overpower the good unless we have two goods. All right. So if you go back, we have understood that we want to create two conditionals and then combine them with the and. So then you can say num1 is greater than num3. So we have said the only time two conditionals combined with the and will be true. Let me use the if statement now because you already learned about it. We can say num1. So if you can say num1 is greater than num2 and num1 is greater than num3. All right, so two conditionals combined will become true only when both conditions are true. So only when this is true and this is true is when this will evaluate the body. So num1 is 35. Is num1 greater than num2? False. So immediately we get a false, we exit. Because we said the only time this condition will be true is when this, the first one and the second one are true. All right. So the next one we need to check about is the OR. So we go back to the truth table. So we have true, no. We have A, B, and then A, we use double bus, A or B. So we use the same. So true, 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 false, true, 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 false, false, true, and then false, false. So this conditional specifies that any two conditions will only be false when both are false. So it is the opposite of what the AND was doing. So it's like being told to pick a good thing or a bad thing. So you always choose the good. And it will only be bad in case both of them are bad. So we have bad and then bad. So we say true and true is true. We can take true. So good and bad, you take good, which is true. False and true, we have one true. So we have one favorable occurrence. We take the true. Then since there's no favorable occurrence, we take either. This is the truth table. So it says it will only be false if both the conditions are false. So this one means either of these conditions is true. So let's do this as 20. If either of these conditions are true, the whole expression becomes true. So is num2 greater than num2? False. Is num1 greater than num2? Num3? True. What does this expression do? So here we have a false and a true. So if we go back, a false and a true gives us a true. So this expression evaluates to true and the condition inside is evaluated. I am inside. So if we run this, you can see I'm inside. And the final one I already talked about is called the not. The not is used to inverse the truthness. So if this one evaluated to true, if I come here and add a not there, so you first evaluate whatever is inside, it becomes true, and then you negate it with a not, it becomes false. That's a very brief introduction about operators. And so if you go back here, we talked about the basic if, then we use the age scenario. So we say student age is equals to 19. Then here we have an officer who is checking whether you can go to a club. So we can say if student age is greater than, so we want a student to be 18 or greater. So what do we use? Greater than or equals to 18. Then console.log. Yep. You can proceed. So if we run this, we get yep, you can proceed. What if this student was 17? Nothing is printed because this is skipped. So the next thing I need to tell you is that what if you have two conditions? So what if we have several conditions? So let's check someone's age. So we have the person let's call it my age. And then we want to check three things. So we have something called Gen Zs. So this is someone who is below 24. Now let's do okay, so Gen Z is someone below 24 years. Then you have an alpha. I can do below 10 years. And then millennial is above 24. Below or equal. All right, so we have different conditions. So before we get to that point, before I show you how this one works, let's collapse this, is that let's go back to our student scenario. So we want to, if we said if my age is greater or equals to 18, we run this block. So this block we said console.log, good to go. Now, what if you want to do something else as a fallback? We have another block which is called the else. So the else is like the default. So similar way you would say, if let's check, let's assume you are going to college. So let's assume you are going to college and you have different choices. So you have, let's start with the basic thing, you can be a farmer. So this one is, whenever everything goes wrong, I will become a farmer. But before I become a farmer, I have applied to be a doctor. I have applied to be an engineer. So this is what we call the fallback. So you tried the doctor. If you pass the doctor, all these are ignored. If you tried the doctor and fail, we move next to you trying to be an engineer, you fail. And then we go to the fallback, which runs whenever all the other conditions fail. So the fallback, we can say console.log, you are young, wait for your time. So our age is 17. We get you are young, wait for your time. So this is how we work with the else block. So the next thing I need to show you is that what if we have multiple conditions that we want to check? All right. What if you have multiple conditions we want to check? So what if you want to check whether you are now greater than 18? So, and then something you might need to understand is that the order matters. So what if here we have another syntax? If you want to add multiple conditions, you can come here and do else if. So this one is continuing to change the method. So else if my age is greater than 40, then you can say console.log too old to club. All right, so let's say we are 50. Good to go. So what happened? We have different conditions, but we get different results. So what would be the issue? The issue is the order. So the if statement is evaluated from top to bottom. So the first condition is my age greater than 18. Yes, we get into this code block, we execute this, and we jump out and continue executing the other things. So the way you structure your code or your if statement is very key, because now if I move this here, and then here we do my greater than 18. So we need to change the text as well. All right, to go to the club. So because it evaluates from top to bottom, so if either of them matches, then it is executed. So since my age is greater than 50, we can do that. And then if my age is 25, go to go, because this one was false, and then this one became true. And then now if you do 10, it will execute the fallback, which is the else block. So that's the beginning of the else statement. So if you go back, we have talked about the else if, and then how we can start chaining. The way I've showed you how to chain the conditions. We did talk about the comparison operators, the logical operators I explained. And then the next thing you need to work with is the ternary operator, which takes in the form of so this is a new operator. So if my age is greater or equals to 18, then we say console.log good to go. Else, we say the else is the default or the fallback. Console.log too young. If you have such a code, we have a simpler way of working around this, which takes in the form the condition, question mark, the value if it is true, and the value if it is false. So it is similar to this, whereby the condition is my age is greater or equals to 18. And then we console.log good to go. So it's still the same. So the condition, so the block of that condition, this is the block of this, and then the fallback, which is console.log to young. So this is exactly equals to this, which is on top, but this one is now very, very precise. All right. All right. So this is the ternary operator. Maybe you can say, you can create a variable for the same. Let message is equals to something like it's good to go. And then too young. And this one is very simple. So it is still the same as the if, but this one is similar. There's another rule of thumb. Don't chain more than one ternary. If you need to chain more than one, it becomes unreadable. So you need to chain one. By chaining one, I mean, don't continue here. So this is the else block. Before we reach the else block, whatever I want to check, if I want to check my age is equals to 17, we can still continue to chain. We can say one more year, else we can say 2 young. So it still works. So it still works, but now the more you chain, so my formatter doesn't want any jokes. The more you chain, the more it is hard to read. So let's continue. Let's talk about something called short circuiting. So in JavaScript, we have a way to evaluate the truthfulness. So if I say node, I want to get into a repo, there's a way to evaluate truthfulness. So if I say no, so I need to show you the truthfulness of the values. Okay, so I don't know whether this one will work. All right, so using double exclamation marks converts any expression into a Boolean value. So double exclamation to convert this into a Boolean, and then an empty string is false. Double exclamation, an empty null, get false. Double exclamation, an empty array, we get true. Double explanation, undefined. So JavaScript has a way of giving values truthfulness. So whatever you need to understand is that null is false by default, undefined is false by default, and an empty string. All right. So what is called short circuiting? We can short circuit using the OR. Let's start with the OR. So we can say const my. So let's say const my name is equals to TechWithTwin. So we can come here and say we have a function const message msg is equals to my name. If we have something if our name is truthy or guessed. So what syntax is this? It's still the same thing we talked about. The JavaScript evaluates expressions from left to right. So what will JavaScript do? JavaScript comes, checks my name. So is my name truthy? By truthy we said we only have these values as false. So we have null, undefined, empty string. These are false. So anything else will be true. So my name is true. And if it's true, it is returned. So it is returned. So if I try to do that, we get TechWithTwin. But what if my name is false? We said an empty string is false. So false or true. What did we say about this? False or true? I don't know whether we wrote false or true. We take the truth. And which is the truth? This one is the truth. So if we come here and run this, we get the truth value. So you can read more about this. The next one is the AND. So if we replace this with the AND, so this one now means, is my name true? Is my name true? Yes, no. So my name is an empty string and an empty string is false. So false, if it is false, let's see. We get nothing. Because if it's false, then this expression does not having something because to return, because this one is false, false and true. If we said in an AND, the only time it will be true is if everything is true. So by the time JavaScript executes my name and finds it false, nothing else happens. So if this one is true, so this one is true and true. We said, so it will return guessed. Let's see. Why? Because the only time an AND will be true is because everything is true. So the true, it continues and then returns the last known truth value, which is the guessed. So if we go back here, this is what short circuiting gets you. Now you can do something like, so message is equals to, if you have something in my name and do something, all right? Do something. Do you get? So this, it returns, if this true, this one is true, it returns the rest. You see when it's already evaluated. So this is usually useful whenever you are dealing with maybe dashboards. You can have something like, if a person is an admin, true, and do the rest. If this one is true, then do the rest. Then, so that and, so the and replaces something like is admin, return this. So the and is used to short circuit this and get that value. As I said, we need to evaluate this one. So let's do it again. So we say my name. So So we get TechWithTwin. So my name, this one is true, then this one is false. So what do you think it will return? No, MSG. It should return an empty string. And which one was returned? So if we have something in my name, then do something. All right? Yeah. So and then the final thing you need to look at is the common pitfalls and best practices. As I have said, truthy values and falsy values. We said truthy values. You just need to understand the falsy values in JavaScript. So these are the data that evaluates to false by default. So null will evaluate to false, and define will evaluate to false, and then an empty string will evaluate to false. False values, we have already talked about them here. We have even more. We have the 0 as well. So we have the false, 0, empty string, null, and defined, and not a number. All the other values are treated as true. So if empty string, so what is an empty string? In the truth format is false. So this one won't run. And then finally, we talk about best practices. Use the triple equal sign as much as you can. And then keep code readable. Don't break ternary operators into too many nitty-gritties as I showed you. And then prefer early returns in function to reduce nesting. And then in a conclusion, we say that the JavaScript if-else and the ternary operators are helpful in controlling logic. And that's it from me, guys. Make sure to follow TechWithTwin for more. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, share with your friends and colleagues. And see you later, guys. The next tutorial will be about the switch statement, so keep it locked.